Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, some days I'm so glad that the director can't see me misbehave in person, because if she reads the reports, she must know I'll get in trouble. 949-8037, as we invite you to be a part of our first discussion. We talk about Carb Festa. 12:30, the Georgetown Revitalization Project. Mr. Colin Lumsden will be your guest. And then at 1:30, well, what do we have in store? Want to tell you more about it? Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255. Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. And publicly, let me extend not only a very warm Talk Today welcome, but a personal apology to our guests for having to endure me before the show started. This is how we warm up. With good company, Miss Deborah Barnes-Tabor. Miss Deborah, you've seen it all. I mean, this is how the talk show is so vibrant and energetic, huh?
Absolutely. It's entertaining for me, so I can only imagine how entertaining it is for those who are listening.
Yeah, I mean, you work with Susan every day. You got to be on your... Yeah, on
P's
point.
and Q's.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And also joining us is, chef extraordinaire, Miss Jessica Moore. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming in and bringing the energy, man, because walking on that stairs, I thought, it's only 15 flights, but boy, it felt like 5,000. Wednesdays are wonderful. I believe, and the ending in Hawaii is great. And we get a chance to talk about the arts in particular, and not just to see the celebrations here, but sometimes as a contingent, we can travel to the region and not just participate, but showcase. I've never been to Carb Festa, but all who have gone have returned safely. Some of the stories untold, but one day we'll get them when they publish their memoirs. Now, Ms. Deborah, before we ask for Jessica, we will be take guidance from you so that we behave somewhat.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I have to respect those in our company. For those who don't know, I mean, Carb Festa, we've been participating for a number of years. I was trying to get earlier how long, but it's been quite a while. What is it to an extent? And then share with us this contingent and what we're doing.
Right, well, I really wish George was here from the Cultural Foundation to help answer some of these questions, because I don't know exactly how long we've been participating in Carb Festa, though I do know it's been, we have for a certain number of years. Mm-hmm. Carb Festa began in 1972 in Guyana, actually, to showcase the culture of Guyana, largely, and then the wider Caribbean as well. So we're happy to once again take part in that and take a bit of Cayman to Trinidad this year.
And that's the thing. And also join us, as we mentioned, Miss Jessica Moore, the idea that when sometimes we think of art and creatives and they're like, I'm glad, and I see that I'm sad, glad that we're now thinking about it, but sad that we've only now thinking about it. The culinary arts, I mean, food is something that you eat with your eyes, first and foremost.
Absolutely.
And what you and Brittany and you guys do, oh man, making me long for lunch, breakfast and snack and everything else.
Absolutely. It's often an overlooked art, but it's an art nonetheless, because we take the time, we take the passion to kind of plan out everything from the beginning, all the ingredients that we need, down to the presentation, down to the smells, the colors, how it's going to please you on the eyes. It's really a dedication and an art form nonetheless.
It is. And the notion that I look at our food, I I will never call myself a chef. I love to be in the kitchen. I love to eat. I'd probably be a willing participant to sample many things. But we think of our mothers and our grandmothers. Some of us, it's our fathers as well. But there was a lot of times the women in the household who would be in the kitchen. And that love, that passion, that planning and preparation. It could be from the ground that they literally went out there and found a little bit of bread kind. Maybe they were waiting for their man folk to come back, usually for I guess the provision. And sometimes just bring the catboat to shore and bring in a little bit of fish, and they would prepare this thing. It might be one pot, but it was something about it, and the smell, the taste, and all. Right, Jessica?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Miss Deborah. Well, jump in. If not, I was going to ask you.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, to me, Caymanian food obviously is among the finest in the world. One, because it can be all cooked essentially in one pot, and you need very few ingredients, yet you have an extremely scrumptious and delicious meal when you're through, whether it's your conch stew or your fish stew or, of course, that turtle stew, which is absolutely my favorite.
Well, I join you with all three of them, and sadly I think the taste of the turtle has changed, but that's probably because of the feed. My statement for today, that I want to continue later on. But let me ask, because you were sort of, taking me where I want to ask when we talk about the culinary presentation, and ask Jessica with respect to, what's going to happen as part of that. But as we go to CarFest and we look at all the things that are going to be unfolding, tell us about it, and the contingent who's attending, where we're going to be participating and the like. And we bring George. See, if you were George doing the Country Star, we would let you, have your way. But it doesn't work that way. Look, sit next to her, man. I mean, she don't bite.
In terms of the contingent, I think I'm going to pass that to George. Because he knows more about it. Okay, so joining us equally from CNCF, George Jones. I think Sue's going to have him do a little drop later on, but that'll be another time. Afternoon to you, man. I'm glad that you make it.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Traffic on the road.
Boy, it was there yesterday too. Tomorrow it'll be no better. 100,000 people, they're saying that's more.
Right.
Welcome, man. Welcome. Let's have some fun.
It's good to be here. Yes, sir.
We were just chatting earlier about this contingent to CarFest, and I reckon it's a theme. But tell us about the contingent, and I don't want to call it entourage.
We call it contingent or delegation.
No, I'm not called delegation. I won't do that to you.
Right. Well, it is made up of several disciplines, namely theatre, music, culinary arts, the heritage arts, and am I missing somebody?
Dance.
Yeah, dance. Definitely most importantly, dance.
He said the most important. You used to do that. Good see you.
Yes, and we have a contingent of 49 persons who will be representing the Cayman Islands across those various disciplines. And it is headed by our artistic director, Dr. Henry Matu. So he's busy right now at the moment, getting the theatre part of it under control, because we're also presenting a play which was written by Dr. Frank McPhail, and this play is called Downside Up. So we'll be taking a full cross-section of Caymanian arts and culture to CarFest 14 in Trinidad this year.
I think it's the 16th to 25th of August, thereabouts?
Yes, sir. Yeah. 15th to the 26th.
5th, yeah. Somewhere. And that's, when you think about it, to go and to be a part of the wider Caribbean, and I see the rehearsals and the many evenings of the actors. I was hesitant to say that because I don't want people to mistake, but the performers, they're there, in their day, doing their job so that the country can continue to run. And then in the evenings, for extended hours, rehearsing, practicing, making sure. For those also who have seen Dr. Frank's any of his plays, but this one in particular, George, it just shows the phenomenal talent that we have in the playwright as well as on the acting.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, across all disciplines, we have the best of the best and who are available. I mean, there are some that are not available, but again, those who have availed themselves of the opportunity, you can guarantee that it will be a great representation of the country.
Right.
I mean,
and as you share, I was just thinking as I come back to Jessica, the idea, the theme, I made it highlighted to make sure that I read it correctly. The tangible and intangible, connect, share, invest. Ms. Deborah, that's what we need to do if we're going to preserve but also promote, not just regional but local.
Absolutely, it's hugely important, and from the museum's perspective, we're actually taking a representation of our traditional arts so that we can showcase what Cayman is truly about from the perspective of the elderly who were taught these different plaiting styles and embroidery styles and stitching styles and net making styles from their forefathers. So it's hugely important, and the museum will actually be there in the country booth this year to help make sure that we offer a really good presentation about who we are as Caymanians. I was fortunate to attend CARAFest in Barbados in 2017, and I must say, for other countries represented, they really put on a show. So we want to make sure that we're in par with all of those other regional countries.
No, just good from that perspective, not just the culinary. I mean, please, share as you want to. But when we think of Cayman cuisine, I mean, like I said, I enjoy almost food from everywhere. There's some places where I won't eat it again because there's no. All my friends said when he came up to university, he said the food was seasoned with salt and disappointment. But thankfully, that's not here. Yeah. Our food is great, man.
Yeah, I think it's because we are such a big melting pot. I mean, we do have our base culture in terms of, everything we've learned from our heritage, from the older folks, and everything that has just come down from our history. But we have so many different cultures here now that we're mixing with. I mean, we really couldn't lack any kind of taste or seasoning or anything we could possibly think of in this day and age, because it's so easily accessible, and then everybody is putting their own twist on things, and then that's making it into turning traditions and changing them into things that people will carry on for their children, and they will always be changing them. But I think once we always have that base in terms of where we came from, we will always have something to look back on, and we try to carry that through, especially with the three of us, so the women in white. We definitely make sure to carry those traditions on, whether we're going into schools and teaching about Cayman style beef and cassava cake and everything, all the basics. We try to definitely keep that heritage alive.
I commend you for it, man, and I hope, as we were sharing earlier, that you get a chance to come back on, because you, Brittany and Tamisha, Tamisha, George, you're talking about phenomenal young ladies, incredibly gifted.
Very much so.
Yeah, amazing.
And they're all entrepreneurs, which is added value.
Well, it's something that I can't, and I don't say this to believe this exclusive, but I believe strongly it is something that is inherent, innate in the Caymanian, that entrepreneurial spirit. You see it from the very, very young child, having this business acumen, this desire to do this thing. And it's very evident in them. Now, George, the idea that we have not just CARAFest coming up, but we got 2 weekends, from what I'm told.
Yes, sir.
This weekend and then the next over the country to get a little preview.
Yes, that's right. So coming up this weekend, the 21st and 22nd, is it Saturday and Sunday? 20th and
20th and 21st.
20th and 21st, yeah. Right. We'll be showcasing the music and the dance aspect of our CARAFest contingent. So spread over the 2 weeks. This weekend is music and dance, and next week we'll be concentrating on the drama, which will be Downside Up, Dr. Frank.
So with Dr. Frank,
yeah. So we're encouraging all locals, all residents, to come out and support, because it's also a fundraiser to continue our programs, and we are inviting you to come out and see a glimpse of what we'll be representing the Cayman Islands at CARAFest. And also just have a wonderful evening of clean, wholesome entertainment and talent.
And the notion that we have the Hakka Theatre right there, it's in most places the cultural epicenter in a sense. And here we have more and more opportunities to be a part of it, to see what the local talent, what the budding talent, what sometimes was a regional melding of stuff. As we close out the discussion, so we will invite you to come back. Miss Jessica, we'll start with you first. Your trip to CARAFest, the idea to be a part of the Cayman contingent, the representation, what does that mean to you?
This is my first time. Actually, being brought on and going. So I'm excited to just see what it's all about. You know, it's going to be, a brand new experience for all three of us because this is all our first times. So I'm just excited to kind of go and see what it's all about. I'm excited that they decided to bring us on in this aspect of it, in the culinary, and just, you know, bring more attention to that aspect of it. So yeah, I'm just excited.
I got a full report from you when you return.
I'll work on that.
Thank you. And Ms. Deborah, I mean, you are, if I may say, a staple within our cultural community, not just as, you know, your incredible sort of demanding job at the museum, but being able to attend over the years and to see it. Your thoughts on this particular Carfesta?
Well, I'm also excited to attend Carfesta this year. As I said earlier, you know, having attended the Carfesta 2017 in Barbados, I just want to perhaps offer a word of caution also that we never become complacent with the talent that we have on island, because we are up against some stiff competition when you attend Carfesta. So I'm very grateful and hopeful that we can make sure to represent the islands in the way that is beneficial to all.
Well, as we connect, share, and invest, George, sort of, you know, in the absence of Miss Marcy and the responsibility show falls on your shoulders, man. Tell us as we listen to you what this means for us and for the country.
Well, as Deborah alluded to, it is a wonderful opportunity for the Cayman Islands to, you know, showcase the best of what we have to offer, because we're up against some heavyweights. And, you know, people tend sometimes to treat you as, you know, smaller players in the industry. But we are just as big in terms of talent, in terms of our organizational structure, in terms of the quality of what we have to offer. And this contingent contains some of the brightest, most talented minds and individuals. And rest assured that the Cayman Islands will be fully represented to the best of our abilities. So again, we're encouraging you to come out this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and have a glimpse of what we are presenting. This is just a small snippet, but it will give you an idea of what, you know, we'll be representing come Carfesta in August.
Well, whether it's this weekend, as you said, you know, for the music, or the following with the
weekend, the following weekend is for the theatre production.
Don't Side Up.
Yeah, Don't Side Up.
Thanks very much, man. Ms. Deborah, always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us.
Guys, enjoy your trip. Be safe. Have fun. And, you know, be a part of the many.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. When we come back from a break, please rejoin us. We invite Mr. Colin Lumsden as the Georgetown Revitalization Manager to sort of talk to us about the initiative. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Sometimes having a middleman is not a bad thing, especially when it comes to insurance. Do you know that when it comes to cost, ease, speed, and peace of mind, insurance brokers ranked higher than when customers buy direct? So, for all your insurance needs, call Fidelity Insurance. We're the middleman you want. Call us today at 949-7822. Fidelity. We're good for you.
What do we love more than summertime? Extra flights between Cayman and Jamaica with Cayman Airways, of course. Cayman Airways has added extra flights weekly for travel between Grand Cayman and Kingston this July and August. Visit family and friends in Jamaica or send for them to visit you in Cayman. But hurry, these extra seats will sell out fast, so book yours today. Remember now, check-in time is 2 hours before departure. Call Cayman Airways reservations on 949-2311. Contact a travel agent or book online at CaymanAirways.com. Traffic congestion is bad for your mental health, bad for your wallet, and bad for the environment. Did you know that Cayman's carbon emissions per capita are nearly 4 times that of Europe, according to worlddata.info? Empty car seats are a wasted resource and contribute to traffic congestion. Carpooling is socially and environmentally friendly and can save you up to $1,000 per year in fuel and upkeep. Visit the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure Facebook page for more tips on energy-efficient commuting and be an energy advocate.
89.9 Radio Cayman helps you to weather the storm during this hurricane season.
One of the most crucial elements of hurricane preparedness is storm awareness. During the season, it is of utmost importance to pay attention to the latest local weather forecasts, as hurricanes do not suddenly form or strike. There are various methods of advanced notification. Utilizing such may be the difference between a favorable outcome and disaster. Both television and radio serve as excellent mediums with up-to-the-minute storm path information in the wake of a hurricane. Another method of tracking a hurricane may be only arm's length away. Your smartphone or tablet can be your most valuable tool before, during, and after a storm, providing countless numbers of apps with crucial hurricane information. Many apps allow you to track storms with moving radar and satellite imagery, plus offer alerts, current conditions, forecasts, advisories, and even video.
This hurricane preparedness tip was brought to you by your community radio station, Radio Cayman 89.9 FM.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's truly not only a very, very welcome pleasure and surprise to be able to include in our panel not only Mr. Colin Lumsden as the Georgetown manager, but our Deputy Chief Officer in the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Investment. Infrastructure. I always say investment, you know. Investment. Is that a Freudian slip? Yeah. I wonder. I should have a counseling session. I call it CPA because I look at the cost of living, but anyway, that's a different story. Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure. All right, my good friend, after today, he still accept that title, Mr. Tristan Hydes. Yes. With respect to Mr. Lumsden, if I can say for us, Tristan, maybe just say a special good afternoon to you, because I get a chance to see you often, or to have the good pleasure of you joining us in the studio, man.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, two architects.
That's right.
In a studio. Oh,
yeah.
We could be designing some stuff here.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. And I think this initiative bodes well. But Mr. Hydes, with respect, sir, with props, not only on the protocol, but just sort of better understanding. We start with you, help us set the tone as we understand the initiative, and then, of course, Mr. Lums and the technical sort of other aspects, guide us as well.
Yes. Right. So thanks, Dwayne. So we're here this afternoon to talk a little bit about Georgetown, the revitalization of it, and I think I'll just give a brief intro and overview, and then I'll let Colin talk more about the specifics. We want to highlight really two events, if you want. One the town hall meeting, and then the other a food festival, and then some other things that Colin would like to speak on as well. But as you know, this is Georgetown revitalization has been going on for a little while, and to be fair, there's some out there that say they don't really see enough, but we have been hard at work. We've had a tremendous amount of meetings with stakeholders, etc. That and some good things have come out of it, and so as a result, we realized after the initial plan that was drafted by Mr. Kenneth Ebanks that we needed some additional help, if you want to say that, if that's what Colin is, and so we went and hired Colin as the Georgetown manager. He's been on now for a while, a couple of months, late last year, and he sort of picked up the mantle where I just couldn't. I never had the resources to really do it, and he has been busy at it. We've been looking at it very holistically, because we have to think of long term, medium term, and short term, but while the short term may seem easy and quick to do, you have to still think that that's going to affect the medium and long term. And from the government's perspective, we also have to look at resources in terms of financial resources and how to best utilize them. And so we've been doing that. We've, like I said, met with all of our various agencies, NRA and water authorities and all the utility companies, etc., and tried to really make it comprehensive. And so we've been quite successful at it, and we've also been facilitating developers that have been coming in and interested in redeveloping their sites. And this is not just speculative; these are real developers that really want to get into Georgetown and revitalize it. and that's really beneficial. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Colin a little and let him get into it a little, unless you...
No. Hey, listen, I believe two things. The more questions you ask, the more answers you might get. But if you don't listen, you'll never hear.
Yeah, I think Tristan highlighted a lot of historical information regarding my involvement with the project itself. I was kind of on a committee level at first, and I impart my worries and concerns and ideas at the time, and I came on board after leaving Public Works last October, and we've been at it ever since. I have to tell you, after being inside the process itself, it's somewhat overwhelming at times, but so I'm a little bit taken back when people say it's kind of like a cover or facade or something. It's a facade. We're looking at a lot of facades, a lot of covers, a lot of changes, and we use the word holistic because it kind of describes something that is built around a lot of other things.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not just a straightforward infrastructural investment and looking at changing physical forms and all these other things. It's that, but it's also looking at things from a programmatic standpoint, from a policy standpoint. And I know these words get thrown around a lot, but at the end of the day, I'm an architect by profession, root profession, and I'm used to building things. I'm used to putting together the built environment. So I know when there's enough talking and planning, I want to go out and get my Lego set and start putting things together. But the other part of that also is to be careful and also listening. I probably listen more this period of my career and life than I've ever had. And some of you that know me know I'm a little hard-headed sometimes. I think I know it all. No, but I think but good knowledge comes from from so many places, and there's so much historical significance with Georgetown that you can't know it all. It's not like there's one book that you could go to and get all the information that you need.
Exactly.
And it's not just one area that you could focus on and get all the information you need. But it's good to listen, and it's good to understand what it is that people really want. And sometimes you have to put things off and say, you know what, let us think about this a little bit more. And let us see what other options are out there.
Yeah. Well, as I listen to you, I recognize, and if I may share, hopefully not talking to the school, we recognize that you've been busy. We've tried repeatedly to can we schedule a session to come on, and it's just timing. But we'll have it if I can through you and direct it to you and any of the players over the next week, month, year, decades. Use this platform as a way to inform and advise, to involve the people. The session tomorrow evening, 4:30 at the, I still call it Georgetown Town Hall, but the Constitutional Hall, is an opportunity for us.
Yeah.
If you'll guide me, not just as a senior civil servant, but as perhaps colleagues in a sense, so I don't overstep, misstep, or misspeak. I don't think that this is a process that we as a country should look at and say, well, that's be driven by and be labeled a politician or business person. This is a process that we need to take ownership, whether we live or are from Georgetown. But if we live in or from the Cayman Islands, it's going to affect us in many respects. So we need to take ownership.
I think that's a very good point, Dwayne, because a lot of things we think very governmental in terms of things, but there are things that's going to happen with Georgetown that actually involves people. Of course, there's the mechanism of the buying in process, but the people itself is what makes Georgetown. So their involvement in it is very important. So it's not necessarily we're doing processes and policies to say this is how it's going to be done. I think being a little bit technical right now. The things that we have to plan for specifically, we're going to take those things on, whether it be acquiring property for roads, future roads, whether it be planning future facilities or waste management policies and plans, or looking at Water Authority and seeing what their plans are. Or putting all these guys in a room and say, hey, fight it out. Like, let's decide what we're going to do.
Right.
I think those things have to be done. And I think the physical part of it, I mean, what happens below ground in Georgetown is probably just as, in terms of infrastructure standpoint, is just as big and large as what happens above ground. So I think, you're not going to see a lot of stuff to say that there's a revitalization effort. But revitalization is not necessarily always infrastructural. It's programmatic. It's involvement. It's just your change of mind and your psyche. So there's lots of other things that are a part of that sometimes take a little bit of a time.
If I listen to you and perhaps maybe ask, and it's only because, again, with respect, I can think back to those of us that were in sixth form together, having conversations in the common room and coming up with ideas.
Yeah.
I can think back to the early 90s.
It's a long time ago.
I'm telling you about it.
Exactly.
Right? Even in the early 90s, some of us are freshly back from university, some of us have been working in government, and discussions even at public works, private sector people talking about some of the same things that are being discussed now about revitalizing the town, having evening and some of us even got pots and plants and try to do things, but there's no political will from the elected, political will to buy in from the country.
Yeah.
It may be unfair to ask of you, but if you do respond, I would ask the public not to beat us up for it, because we see things and believe, that's political, that's for a politician. With respect to them, even those that are close friends, it isn't for them, it isn't fair. This is us.
This
right?
is us. Yeah, so this is really for us.
Is that part of the challenge then that we're facing, that we're seeing this, and it may be a political thing to win a vote, to be perceived as a project that's going to put money. It could be all that, but that's just part of it.
I'm going to be honest. I don't think, in all fairness, I think this government or the past two governments have really have shown their commitment to the Georgetown revitalization. And they've hung in there. Obviously, I'm going to be completely frank here. They sometimes have voiced their frustration at things not happening as quickly as possible, to me as well, right? I'm the one to get the licks for that one. But and rightly so. But, and we've explained the process out and shown them, hey, this is where the track is going. And so it actually, they see the big picture. And so I think they see it for the country. And in all now, in fairness, looking back at it, we should have probably grabbed this bull by the horns a lot sooner. But that's water under the bridge.
Exactly.
So one thing I want to say with that, just maybe going back to things you initially said, the political aspect is a reality. We always have to respect it.
Yeah.
You could hide it, you could not say it, but we're all dictated by these things, and but there's a balance in everything, and I think we employ that balance. There's a realistic approach that's long term, and it's intrinsic, and it's very close to our heart. And I think from all participants of this process, I could say 100% there is some level of genuine wanting to see this thing happen. But I just want to paint a quick picture. You talked about the early 90s and us coming back from school and all this stuff. I think that was my first recognition that Georgetown was sliding a little bit. But the only thing I could say is it was happening everywhere. I think we need to stop pretending that we're unique in that situation. Kingston, Barbados, all these other surrounding countries.
Even big U.S. citizens.
U.S., a lot of cities in Florida was depleting. If you look at Coral Gables, it wasn't what it was in the 80s and even early 90s. It started to slide. Now Coral Gables is making a comeback. And all these other cities around Florida and even in the Caribbean are making comeback because there's a natural move towards urban living. There's a natural move towards being smaller and being close to things.
Sustainable.
And being sustainable.
New urbanism.
It's new urbanism. It's exactly. And so,
which isn't new at all, actually.
Neo-traditional design is what we do.
Ironic.
All right. I love this conversation. I apologize to you. I did not ask Ms. Susan earlier if she would allow us to not take the break at the time, but forgive me. We have to take a break. It's a short break. We'll go and get some chocolate. When we come back, more talk today. Deputy Officer Mr. Tristan Hydes and Mr. Colin Lumsden are our guests.
Summertime time is when Cayman Airways full of people are travel to Jamaica. If you're late for checking your flight, you will lose your seat. Remember now, check-in time for Cayman Airways flight is 2 hours before departure. Make sure you're not late.
King Sports Center Art of Fun Summer Camp is back from July 2nd to August 2nd. Now in its 15th year, the Art of Fun Camp is ideal for kids ages 5 through 10 with activities from football, basketball, dodgeball, squash, rock climbing, arts and craft, dance, singing, and more. Your child can practice physical and social skills while having fun in a safe and secure environment. For more info, call 946-KING. Like King's Sports Center on Facebook, and you can also find them on Instagram or call 946-5464. King Sports Center, providing you with all your fitness, recreation, and relaxation needs. Register before May 31st and save 10% on camp registration.
Cayman is going to Carfesta 2019 this summer. Get a sneak peek preview of all performances we'll be doing in Trinidad. 2 weekends only at the Hartwell Theatre. Music and dance shows on Saturday the 20th of July and Sunday the 21st of July. The touching play, Downside Up, written by Frank McPhail on Saturday, July 27th and Sunday, July 28th. Tickets are just $25 per person per show. Purchase at Foster's Airport and Strand, Funky Tangs, Healthcare Pharmacy Grand Harbor, the CNCF office, and online at eventpro.ky.
RC Fusion, featuring Billboard pop hit songs and more from the 70s to the 90s.
RC Fusion.
Weekdays from 10 a.m. till 12. RC Fusion.
Brought to you by Nathan General Maintenance and Construction. You break it, they fix it. Call the General for a free quote. 917-7586.
RC Fusion.
Water Authority Cayman wishes to advise its valued customers and the motoring public that the eastbound lane traffic along Rex Crichton Boulevard will be diverted to Chime Street heading towards Shamrock Road on Thursday the 18th of July from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. to facilitate planned works. Traffic signs will be posted in the general vicinity, and all motors are being asked to drive with caution to ensure your own safety as well as that of the Water Authority staff. The Water Authority appreciates your patience and understanding of its customers and the public as it undertakes these road works, and do apologize for any inconvenience caused.
JN Money Transfer, in association with Roma United Sports Club, present the official Jamaica Independence celebrations on Friday, August 2nd. Daytime activities take place on Cardinal Avenue from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. with the best Jamaican food, arts and craft display, free sampling, and free health checks. Don't miss the free lunch hour concert, plus lots of prizes and giveaways. Nighttime concert over at Crown Square on Eastern Avenue, featuring international reggae and dancehall superstar Wayne Marshall, alongside Paul Train, Dream Chasers dancers, plus lots of local performers. Come participate in the Kids Talent Contest, Best Dress Competition, Dance Contest, and Hot Wings Eating Contest. Music by DJ Marcus. Come out early to win a 40-inch TV, plus lots of giveaways and prizes. Admission is free. Sponsored by Popeyes, Best Dressed Chicken, Magnum, People's Choice Grocery, Superior Auto, Ideas Marketing, Kmart Hair and Beauty Supply, Danny's Auto, Breeze FM, and Radio Cayman.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. And we're hoping to not only extend an invitation for our listeners to come out tomorrow evening, 4:30 at the Constitution Hall. That's formerly the Georgetown Town Hall, for part of a meeting. Hear more information in the studio. Deputy Chief Officer, Mr. Tristan Hides, in the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure. Boy, investment keeps coming in, no? Together with the Georgetown manager, Mr. Colin Lumsden. Both architects, yeah?
Yeah.
Boy, you know they say, you heard the story? 2 architects go into a room? No, just kidding. But Jens, you were sharing, man. This is a very fascinating subject for all of us. Very interesting.
Yeah, it is. And, we are very passionate about it. And, when Colin came on board earlier this year, we decided to put together a stakeholder steering committee that will guide him through the process, and that's hopefully a long-term committee that will, continue on even no matter who's the manager, and we'll kind of see the revitalization process through, because like I said, it's not just a short-term thing. This really is a long-term thing. Government will facilitate a lot of the development or redevelopment, but of course it also has its infrastructure responsibilities that it's looking at. So there's a lot of planning going on at the moment.
And as I listen to you, and certainly, Colin, you share with us, but I can just jump in and ask those of us who still own land, the Kimani families who still own land, they can see the attraction of selling that property now for a lot of money. But that speculative nature of someone coming in, holding on to that property long term might be more beneficial, might be a greater legacy. But to see that conversion, that buy-in, sometimes comes through education.
Yeah, and that's what we have been doing all along, and that's what the steering committee will be about as well. And a lot of those actually, are part of the steering committee, and we've met with them. We've met with a lot of people that we consider stakeholders. There's sort of indirect stakeholders, which is sort of a general public, and then there's real direct stakeholders, which are those that are really own little pieces in there.
And I think one of the things that would supplement that committee from a long-term investment standpoint in terms of time is we've identified few neighborhoods throughout Georgetown, and we've already talked to a few people from different neighborhoods. We definitely encourage like co-ops and NPOs, and if you care about your neighborhood, you want to put together a committee. We encourage those things because that fosters the creative process and the public involvement. So those co-ops would also feed into that bigger committee. And one of the things the committee's there for is not just we even struggle with the word committee, like whether to call it board, committee, steering board. It's more of a board than it is a committee. So there's terms of reference. There's strict adherence to certain principles and guidelines that has to be followed. And hence, we're taking a little extra time because we want people that we feel represent the diversity and demographics of Cayman. From you know what I mean. I'm trying to expound on it, but
no.
I don't think you can. You just want a good cross representation, democratically, and it also feeds the process naturally also. So that's the kind of level of setup that we see that would help the process in the future.
But as I listen to you too, I think we being the political elected, we being the sort of the appointed, we being the citizens and the stakeholders and whatever title that we translates as, need to respect that. Can't rush the process. It shouldn't be a case where the cart is before the horse, because that short-term win, that low-hanging fruit, negatively impact the medium, as you said, Mr. Hayes, and long-term consequences and planning. And oftentimes that's what we do. We get the win now, and we talk about hindsight.
People say, cut off your nose to spite your face.
Good people, hindsight is 20/20, but it's also foresight, as old people had.
Right. I think one other thing too with that setting setup, I would say, is the fact that we treat Georgetown as a special place. I think no longer we're going to ignore it as one of the districts. It's not. So I think even from a urbanity or from a physical infrastructure standpoint, Georgetown is physically different from any other neighborhood or any other district. And when you have regulation guidelines that follows a certain rural or suburban setup, Georgetown tend to suffer a little bit. So one of the things we're trying to do is identify what are some of the peculiarities of Georgetown. We have a central business district. We have some of the historical buildings that have been around for a long time, some 80, 90 years, whatever the case may be. And we want to treat those districts and those neighborhoods special, and with those special thinking comes special regulation, special policies that protects it. So that's also one of the things I think is a benefit from all of this.
Well, gents, I'll ask you if you would. the news break. See, when you have fun, you realize it just goes quickly. Yeah. You thought this was fast. You should just let's get into it some more when we come back. I really appreciate your time, and I'm hopeful that the public, not just Georgetowners, not just those who live and work in Georgetown, but all of us who live and work here, Caymanians in particular, will avail ourselves of these opportunities. Please rejoin us after the break.
Radio Cayman. Radio Cayman's newsroom. These are the biggest stories right now.
The Cayman Islands Law Reform Commission is looking for your feedback on the new Draft Education Amendment Bill 2019 and the Draft Anti-Bullying Schools Regulations. The legislation can be found at www.lrc.gov.ky or may be collected from the offices of the Commission. You're invited to submit your comments by September 16th for consideration. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. A U.S. judge has sentenced Mexican drug kingpin Joaquin El Chapo Guzman to life in prison plus 30 years. 62-year-old Guzman was found guilty of 10 charges, including drug trafficking and money laundering, by a federal court in New York in February. A Turkish diplomat was among 2 people killed in an attack in Erbil, the capital of Iraq's Kurdistan region. The victims are thought to be Turkey's deputy consul general in the city of a civilian. Turkey has already vowed to retaliate. Neuralink, a company set up by Elon Musk to explore ways to connect the human brain to a computer interface, has applied to U.S. regulators to start trialing its device on humans. The system has been tested on a monkey that was able to control a computer with its brain. That's according to Mr. Musk. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands. What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio Cayman is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio Cayman.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. In the studios, we have a discussion concerning the Georgetown revitalization. Just a quick reminder at, was that 1:30? Yeah, that'll be 1:30. We have a chance to talk about the National Conservation Law. See, some days they actually expect me to read and know these things. But anyway, right now I'm truly honored to have the Deputy Chief Officer, Mr. Tristan Hydes, in the Ministry of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure, together with the Georgetown manager, Mr. Colin Lumsden, as we talk about the revitalization project for Georgetown. And, I have like 1,000 questions and comments, and sometimes they'll be perceived as, I don't know, maybe socioeconomic or even socio-political. But when I first heard about the Georgetown manager, I'm thinking, be the district manager for all of the districts. Mm-hmm. And as we focus on Georgetown, well, the nature of all the districts. And maybe sometimes as the country starts to grow, I think, Colin, you inspired me in thinking that way when you said just now that the peculiarities of Georgetown that are different.
Yeah. Funny enough, I get calls from other districts, even outside of Cayman, to the other sister islands, asking for, just general advice. So it spurred a lot of thinking in terms of people having a more, kind of close relationship with the government and which any other type of agency. By having that representation.
And not to take away, and I do recognize and respect your time, but I was just thinking that if it would cause us as the citizens of this country to buy into this thing, just think of our own districts. In West Bay, for instance, where the 4-way is, there was a bank in the 70s. Yeah, it was a very serious commerce right in that sector. Go back earlier, the railway and the different things. Then you go into Borden Town, and even to East End, that was a little bit more remote. You still had these things that are not just unique, but are significant to the history, but also now to the future.
And it's so funny you brought up that intersection in West Bay. I remember that as a kid, and get your tapes across the street, walked by right, all these other activities that happen. Right, and it's basically because you had an intersection that was very important. And that's kind of one of the things that we're looking at in Georgetown, like these nodes, these intersections in the road, making them a little bit more special. Special that you want to visit, you want to come, you want to do the various activities that's available to you. So, it's just little things like that you think that you take for granted. Over the years, we've kind of faltered away from that type of thinking. Sometimes we think, new is better, but the old thinking, some of those things are actually...
What's that song? An old thing better than new thing. So then saying, that's a good song. but it is, and I love to laugh. I mean, it's about keeps me young and handsome. Right. But you speak of public spaces and pocket parks and green spaces. You look at the usability of a space. We are now so almost conditioned to drive everywhere. But it's probably because, it's not walkable. There's not the pedestrian avenues that existed before in the absence of the car. We own a bicycle. Now we need to get back to that.
And that's what the presentation will be about tomorrow. Yes, there'll be people there that will have heard some of this before, but I think it's good to keep talking about it and continually building on it. And so that's what we want to do, show people really how we're thinking in the kind of train of thought that we're going down, and here continue to get their feedback on it, because this is an ever-evolving process. And so we're going to do that. In addition to that, then we're going to be talking about some other events that we're looking to have to sort of rejuvenate the town.
I just want to maybe just expound on that thinking also too. One of the things we've done the last few months, I would say, is the idea of a plan. The word, I guess being an architect, the word plan, there's many type of plan. One of the things we did was to change that word from a revitalization plan to revitalization initiative. And hence the concept of being holistic. So we're not unveiling a plan tomorrow that's gonna, have all these infrastructure and everything built out. That's not it. Yes, we're gonna say roads are gonna happen this way and that way, but even what the road looks like, we're not necessarily entirely sure yet. We're still working on that. In terms of what goes between those pockets of roads and blocks, those are the things that we want to get involvement from the people. Where do you want to park? Do you feel comfortable going to that area? Do you want a multi-story car park? Where would you want it? Would you pay for parking? Do you want more on-street parking? These are ideas that we're still in the design and thinking stage. So we're not unveiling any big plan that is done and finished.
But as I listen to you, I'm thinking if we come and listen and hear, and then we may have an idea, and there's a way for us to communicate the idea, not just there at a meeting, but in a different vein. But if we get involved, I was just, as you were speaking, I was just driving in my mind to different cities, and I'm thinking of, say, Japan, for instance. Multi-story cars are on this electronic automated system, like a vending machine. You press it and then it comes to you. That could be attached to a building. It could be. Are there things that we would need to employ leveraging the technology, or not? Are we willing to walk? But we're not there.
And we're in such a crossroad right now, even with technology and all these other things. The world is changing so much. The 4G, the 5G. I'm sure you're going to hear about 6G in the next couple of years. So all these things, we're not rushing down the road to put these things in. We're a little bit more careful and deliberate in terms of what we want.
Right. I know, Jens, that you have, and I am hopeful that we'll be able to come, as a public tomorrow to the meeting. If I can ask of you, only if it's not impertinent, we've seen some of the things that are happening sort of behind the scenes. Some of the other things that may not be as visible. So, but the recent installation of pedestrian crossings, Eastern Avenue have a few, or better roundabouts have a few.
Right.
With respect, is this part of that maybe continuing process of it, or is it just NRA?
No. That's it's sort of a joint effort because our ministry is broad and it covers everything. Yeah. So it's sort of like us looking at killing two birds with one stone. They say, but we definitely have gone down the train of thought of thinking about a road with more respect than just the vehicle. So we were thinking of the vehicle, the cyclist, the pedestrian, and how they interact with each other.
True.
Because, in the past we have really thought a road is almost just a road.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Two birds with one stone, or I can offer up to you. Two scoops with one cone.
Yeah.
Much better.
But I could say to the public, though, we're looking specifically at all those things. Pedestrian, what we're doing, what was working, what could work. Do we need to change the regulation to allow this? We used to haphazardly and just randomly put crosswalks where we think we're needed. I think there's going to be a more putting them together in areas that are
it's like the bus
practical.
stops. It's a great initiative,
right.
But
we're looking at that too.
They're there, and now some of them need to move because they're no longer safe because of the new roads.
Correct.
And I think with we call it GTRI, Georgetown Revitalization Initiative. I think with us, we're kind of like that, that glue that would consult every other agency and say, hey, should you look at this? This is what we were thinking of, especially in the core and the heart of our city.
Well, as we look at that, I'm glad that not just professionals like you, but people who are heavily vested, the idea that we standardize certain things, road markings, some lines are yellow, some are white.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you in the US or the UK?
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe ours need to be purple, I don't know.
Yeah.
But they need to be consistent.
The
pedestrians, you press a button and it flashes right away. Other places you press it, wait a second, a few minutes before you cross.
Right.
Yeah.
Significant things that we seem to ignore.
Yeah. But these are things that we also need to get feedback from the public.
Exactly.
It's not about just installing them and just walk away from them. We want to get feedback.
Well, if I'm not beating up on the public too much, because I'm part of the public, if we would stop pointing fingers, stop not just blaming the politicians, but believing that it's them that have, I can borrow a phrase one used one time, the blueprint of intelligence, and the state has the vested interest. Take ownership, participate, come into the meeting tomorrow.
Right. Absolutely.
You heard it before, well, maybe listen again, you hear something new, or maybe you hear something new altogether, and contribute. Your idea may be a great one, it may spark an interest, but we don't talk, we don't know.
I'm guaranteeing you this, Dwayne, that we're going to hear many ideas that tomorrow that we're going to incorporate. We have a very... we have a very smart public.
Yes.
Very technically savvy and aware of their surroundings.
Yeah.
That's one thing I could say.
Second now.
And I want to add that, although it starts at about 4:30, we're willing to stick around and hear. We recognize that, we've heard some people say that it's a little too early. People are getting off. It's ironic because the last one, although it was quite a while ago, said it was a little too late.
Too late. Yeah.
So
every day is a bad day.
Right. But we'll get it right.
I think the thinking behind that was trying to have something that you could transition from work more easily as opposed to going home and
decompressing and not wanting to
traffic and all this stuff. So
it's how I thought, 4:30, invite the culinary artists to come, prepare a little libation and some.
Well, we'll have some events for her though. We are looking at events in the town throughout the year for her to show her skills.
Well, gents, I honestly always appreciate not just shaking your hands, but listening to you. And if the others would not mind, when we can have this level of intellect, this level of interest, we can make a big difference. So.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, we definitely want to thank you for inviting us. We're here anytime you want to talk about our project. We're available. We'll make ourselves available.
We will, man. I'll send you a date after this now for sort of follow-up.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking of a date in August. It's a Friday. Is that a good day?
Friday morning, probably.
We'll have some more roundtable discussion on air. And Mr. Hydes, as far as the Deputy Chief, any sort of thoughts we may want to leave our listeners with?
No, I just want to thank you for the opportunity again, and ask the public to, we appreciate all their feedback and their patience. And we are, again, like I said before, very passionate about this, and we've committed to it, and so we're going to continue through it. And as we continue down the road, I think people will also become more confident in what we're trying to do.
Okay.
So I just want to thank you.
You're most welcome. If I may just ask, hopefully, if you don't put you on the spot, is there an email or a way by which the general public could send through a comment, a question, other than...
Colin.lumsden@gov. We're in the middle of also setting up our various media platforms, Facebook, and even have maybe another public email that you could probably send all your concerns in.
Yeah. All right, well, you know what? When and if we can have any opportunity to help you communicate the message, even if just to remind the public that there's a particular event, please, because this is not just about Georgetown. This is for the country, and as you said, Colin, could be an example. Other districts may decide, you know what, we want to do something in this particular area, and this is important. I'm looking forward to it. I'm hopeful I can amend my schedule to come out tomorrow then. I'm going to ask something afterwards, but Mr. Lumsden and Mr. Hides, have a good afternoon, gents.
Thank you very much.
All right, to our listeners, come back a few minutes to open line. 1:30, the National Conservation Law will be our discussion. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
At Seaboard Marine, customers often ask us questions about their shipments.
I have various items coming from different suppliers that I need to ship to Cayman. Do you offer consolidation?
Yes. Seaboard Marine offers consolidation for full and less than container loads. We can hold your packages at our Miami warehouse until everything arrives and ship it all in one go. And we have the best rates to Grand Cayman. Visit seaboardmarine.com for more information.
Shipping shore to shore, Seaboard.
When you need stability, think Business of the Year.
Considering a new career opportunity, think Best Place to Work.
When dependability matters, think Outstanding Workforce.
In need of a reliable financial partner, think Bank of the Year.
When you seek excellence, think Cayman National.
No matter how many accomplishments we achieve, we always set the bar higher. That's why we are the most awarded bank in Cayman, and we are proud to be your
2018 Bank of the Year.
Headlines. With the latest headlines. All the news when you want it. Tune in to Radio Cayman for hourly headlines of the day's top stories.
One of Cayman's bright and shining young stars.
Local, regional, international.
Turning to international news.
Updates on the hour between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. Radio Cayman News.
Headlines.
Your voice, your choice for today's biggest news.
Summertime is when Cayman Airways full of people are travel to Jamaica. If you're late for checking your flight, you will lose your seat. Remember now, check-in time for Cayman Airways flight is 2 hours before departure. Make sure you're not late.
I just love the warm ocean air.
Yeah? Your car doesn't.
What you mean?
Looks like salt air is eating your bump alive.
Stop rust before it starts with Z-Bot Rust Protection from Vant Motors. The extreme heat, salt spray, and wet tropical weather can damage your vehicle and greatly decrease its value. But Z-Bot's patented formula protects your car's metal seams, joints, and other hidden areas. There's no better rust protection out there than Z-Bot. So book today and keep the rust away. Call or visit Vant Motors Body Shop on Walker's Road. Your only authorized Z-Bot service in Cayman is now available at Vant Motors.
From happy beginnings to happy ever after.
BritK protects your lifestyle with the best insurance cover at the best possible price.
Health insurance with far-reaching benefits.
95% of claims settled in 5 days.
Low-cost life insurance.
And investments.
Security in retirement.
With a custodian pension plan.
For happy beginnings and a happy ever after.
Visit BritK.ky or call 949-8699.
BritK, where people come first.
Always separate debris from household garbage after a hurricane hits. Debris includes roofing materials, downed tree branches, and metals. All items of debris must be placed in separate piles to the front of the property or at a side that is easily accessible to collection trucks. Debris must be placed in a location that will not cause obstruction to roadways or come in contact with electrical lines. For more post-hurricane waste management tips, visit the DEH website at www.deh.gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. A few minutes of open line as we invite you if you want to share your thoughts with us. And very, very grateful both to the Deputy Chief Officer and the Minister of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure, Mr. Tristan Hydes, together with Mr. Colin Lumsden, the Georgetown Revitalization Manager, for joining us. And as they shared tomorrow evening at 4:30 in Constitution Hall, which is what we normally formally knew as the Georgetown Town Hall. 4:30 tomorrow evening, there's a meeting about the sort of initiative. If you can, as Mr. Hydes and Mr. Lumsden both acknowledge, well, 4:30. Some of us are not quite ready to leave work. Others of us have been able to leave early because of our schedules, but it's important. And I say this fully cognizant that even as much as I am endeavoring to attend, we've got to make adjustments to our schedules at times to do the things we would like to. But, it is an initiative that perhaps we can find more. Let's go to our phones on, be a part of our open line segment. Good afternoon, welcome. You're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon. Are your guests still there or are they already left?
They left, Mom. They were
I was hoping to catch them because I thought they were going to be there till 1:30. I need to know if they're going to have some place for us to park and where will it be?
Parking.
Yeah, right.
Right. That is something that I don't wish to sort of speak and sound as if I'm in defense, because they'll probably tell you I'll probably challenge as much as champion. But they were saying that this initiative, the idea that instead of calling it a plan, not just to be, sort of get into semantics, but call it an initiative so that when we look at parking, for instance, do we need parking? Is it on site? Is it multi-story? Is it parking from a distance? And the like. And maybe tomorrow evening that's part of their discussion as to what it is that the people in Georgetown, the users, the residents in particular, would be looking at.
Yes, but the people who plan to attend need to know if they will have parking space wherever.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who are not able to walk long distances, so they should be able to park close to the town hall. But of course, Georgetown is always the last ones to get anything because we have the worst roads. They're like trampolines and
and that's a reality. No, the parking in the country, but in town, is a bit of a challenge. There's some space behind the library, and some.
Yeah, well, when you go behind the library to park, as far as I know, they had reserved parking spaces for members of the Legislative Assembly. And I understand they were supposed to start meeting today. I don't know whether they started or not. But even though they have their parking spaces out by the Legislative Assembly building, and even if they don't park behind the library, and if somebody goes and park there where the block says, member of the Legislative Assembly, then they want to come give us a ticket.
Yep.
So that's not fair to us either.
Yeah.
So there are some. Not going to use it, please let the public use it.
And that issue of parking, just the whole issue of the amount of cars and how often we use our cars. Is there another way that we can get about without having to, worry about driving and parking? I hear you. It is a challenge.
We're living like crabs in a bucket now with traffic.
Well, we are probably, as a consequence of our inaction or inability or unwillingness to speak, and then sadly when people do speak, some of us dismiss, or those people get, the sense that they're being ostracized and victimized. And hopefully, that won't be their mindset going forward, but someone has to pave the way. Huh? If I may ask you though, for Georgetown, if there was one thing, or if there were two or three things that you think could be addressed relatively soon in order to make it better, what would they be? And then also, longer term, but the things that need to be addressed much sooner, what would they be in your mind?
Stop destroying Georgetown, the waterfront and the seashore. We can't see the sea. We can't hardly see the sea, the sunset, and the soon I'll be able to see the sky and more overpasses or underpasses, whatever you want to call them. You've got to make these rich foreign investors stop ruling this island and ruling the politicians to swing them the way they want them to go, and to listen to their own Caymanians that have lived here all their life. We have a big stake in this island, and they need to stop giving it away to every Tom, Dick and Harry that comes in here with all these dollars.
Now, that would be something that would have crossed the board. Anything else that you think that we could look at?
Take care of your own people first. We need passports. Can't get them here. So our world countries can get theirs where they are. We can't even get a US visa anymore unless we've got to spend a pile of money and risk our life to go to Jamaica.
Do you think then that that's the key?
We have progressed backwards for Caymanians. Caymanians are getting absolutely nowhere. We're getting pushed back like the mosquitoes.
Yeah. Do you think, and I asked the politicians to take it on the chin, don't be overly offended, but do you think that part of that issue, we talk about the passports, talk about other things, is it that the reality is that the politicians don't have the level of power, authority, autonomy that either A, they think they have, or B, we mistakenly assume that they have, that they can't, for instance, they say, listen, we need to be able to invite the U.S. Embassy to come here and process visas and passports. Let's say that was their consensus and they made the approach. They can't do it unless they get approval from maybe the governor or the Secretary of State in the UK or whoever. Is that part of the problem, that there is not enough authority for us to negotiate and make such requests?
How come they had it 40 or 50 years ago when they used to come here?
Well,
you could go to the town hall or tower building and left one hour your passport was stamped with a US visa in it.
Right.
Now we have to spend extra money, travel to Jamaica, buy a plane ticket, pay a hotel bill, pay taxes, and risk your life, and then turn around and pay FedEx too.
Right, but that's what I'm asking. Is that the challenge that for some reason now, as you said, we've gone sort of made some steps backwards, we no longer have the autonomy? Is it because whatever? Well, it is. So how do we fix that then? How do we fix that? How do we make that our people become the priority that you see?
Be sensible and treat your people right. Don't just sweet up people and talk all kind of rubbish around the campaign and let they do this and do that and then get back into the reverse.
Okay.
And do damn things they could do.
But what is it that our parents used to tell us? A promise is nothing but a comfort to a fool. So is it then that... Mom?
A promise ain't no comfort to me, and I'm not in a fool either, but although that's what it takes the whole bunch of us to look like.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Is that the challenge then, that we, all of us as the voters in particular, because we're the ones that make the decisions come election day, is it that we are not, one, deliberately, if you don't mind me, I do recognize who you are, deliberately making ourselves informed and involved like you and people like you do. We're not also doing like you and others, speaking out publicly and maybe saying things that perhaps are not that popular, but perhaps need to be said because there's an element of truth to it. Why are we so seemingly afraid to stand up and speak out?
I don't know what's wrong with some people. Why they don't speak up, but I say what I have to say. I don't care who like it or who lump it. I speak my mind.
That's fine. So how do we get more of us to do that? Because apparently we used to do it at some point.
Well, I really wish I could get someone to. I see. Too many of them afraid of this one, afraid of this, afraid of that. I'm sorry, I'm not afraid of none of them. I'll stand up in front of anyone and tell them I got to tell them.
What is it they say? Dumping the whole frightened?
Yeah.
Now, I'll be careful because
Dwayne, you know
yes,
that the Constitution says we're supposed to have our district councils. And up till today, you can't get them to do that. Why? They don't want us to have district councils because they don't want the people in the different various constituencies to have their say, to see how they want things to go. They're going to do it how they want because, like this revitalization Georgetown meeting that they're going to have tomorrow, and they've been, apparently look to me like they've been having more meetings in the Chamber of Commerce than anybody else. And my representative hasn't had a meeting with us since election.
Right. But in the Constitution, I think it's one line, there shall be provision for district councils. There's no meat, there's nothing to flesh it out. I say this, and I don't say this to overly offend people. I say it then, I say now, the document that we approve as a constitutional document really, should still be on the drawing table. It's a pathetic document. It needs to be overhauled and revised, but similarly, that's a document. But again, we as a people are sitting here and allowing things to transpire, and we're not getting engaged, informed, involved to make things better, and then we point fingers and blame.
Well, I would like to talk for longer, but I need to go. I have to go someplace.
That's okay, Mom. You were very inspiring, and it got me all fired up now. So thank you very much, Mom.
When they break their own laws, like they make it and follow the Constitution, they're the biggest sinners.
Well, Thank you so much, Mom.
They're going to have to answer for it one of these days. They're going to realize that.
Well, we all will.
This world not going to last forever. They got plenty. The Lord been warning them about a lot of things. You see all the sargassum. That's one of them things. Airport terminal. You see all that blood in the head.
True.
All these heat waves. The Lord telling them, "You coming soon. You better straighten up and fly right."
Well, I tell you what, we all will be accountable. Yes, Mom.
All right, I got to go, darling.
God bless. Thank you too, Mom. Thank you. All right, well, you know what? Maybe after today, somebody say, boy, you need to slap on the wrist. Others might say, well, I'll give you a cuff about that. We'll see. We have our guest scheduled to talk about the National Conservation Law. I say this respectfully. It is a bit taxing sometimes to get from point A to point B. A lot of cars on the roads, in particular, this time of day, but even this time of year, when usually we would see less traffic because more of us were off island. But seemingly, maybe there are more than 100,000 here now. I don't know. When we come back, we'll talk today.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
There are plenty of reasons to be a Logic customer. There's lightning-fast internet connectivity. There's the great overall customer experience. And now, you can improve your Wi-Fi connectivity with Logic Boost Wi-Fi for free. With Boost, you can extend your freedom to stream, game, and download seamlessly anywhere in your home, like your patio or your underground lair if you have one. Sign up now for any Logic Bundle package and get free Boost Wi-Fi for a limited time. Visit logic.ky for details.
For the Health of It is heard on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. and on Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. It is brought to you by Holy Cross Hospital. Quality medical care and advanced technology with sincere compassion and understanding. Our mission is you. Call 1-954-351-5906 or visit Holy Cross Hospital at holy-cross.com.
Hi, my name is Neraya LeBlanc. I am the minister and evangelist to the West Bay Church of Christ on 24 Batabano Road. I would love to take this opportunity to invite you to experience God's family at West Bay for yourself. We are a caring congregation that strongly believes in reaching out beyond ourselves to spread the gospel of Christ. We also take great pleasure in ministering to the needs of our people in our community. As God's called out kingdom people, we are in the business of transforming lives for the Master's use. For more information, you can visit our website at westbaycichurchofchrist.org or call us at 946-9294 or 917-1809.
Declaring the word of the Lord.
Cayman Islands Church of Christ presents Word of the Lord.
Word of the Lord, heard Sundays at 6:30 p.m. on Radio Cayman.
The Breeze Fusion is back Saturday, November 2nd.
Bigger and better.
Now featuring a 5K walk run and a 10K run for half marathon trainers. Join the fun and help raise funds for the Central Scranton Park and the NCVO. Save the date or register now at CaymanActive.com or at Radio Cayman Studios. Registration is only $15 if registered by September 30th. And all early registrants enter to win a Cayman Airways voucher. The Breeze Fusion 5K, 10K walk run. Saturday, November 2nd.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you so much for joining us. And in the studio, the excellent company of both Ms. Gina Ebanks together with Mr. John Bothwell, and the discussion of the National Conservation legislation and where we are, get an update and the like. Ms. Gina, as the Director of the Department of Environment, I think, wow, glad you brought along your manager for sort of implementation for legislation, Mr. Bothwell. I don't know, man. That is a tall order to fill. But we'll understand and we listen and learn, and hopefully you get a chance to laugh, if you only at my expense, but we'll see. So pleasant good afternoon to both of you again.
Good afternoon, Dwayne.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us here, yeah.
All right. The National Conservation Law, sometimes we hear it in the media from different pundits, and sometimes it's in a light that misinforms, sometimes is perhaps a bit of a misspeak, as it were. With respect, maybe a quick preview of what it is for those who don't know, and because I think we probably look at it and may think of it as some sort of environmental protection legislation, but maybe it isn't.
Yeah. So I think quite often we get asked to address things that the law doesn't have a framework to address, and people don't understand why. So I guess what we always say is this is a national conservation law. It's not a full-blown Environmental Protection Act. So there are certain things that the law doesn't address. The law is really about conservation of our native species and habitats, and then providing tools to ensure that we can protect those, that we can facilitate sustainable harvest of species and use of the environment, throughout the sort of government decision-making arena. And that is basically the nuts and bolts of the National Conservation Law. What it doesn't do is it doesn't address things like air pollution, etc. That's a remit that falls under the Department of Environmental Health, and waste management, that sort of thing. Again, it's not covering all of that stuff. So not to say that we don't need that legislation, but this particular law is about conservation, like I said, of our native habitats and species, essentially.
Mr. Bothwell, any sort of opening comments you may wish to share, sir?
No, just reflecting what the director said. We're here to talk about the National Conservation Law, which, in addition to protecting certain species in certain ways, the setting up the rules for the protected areas that we're starting to create now puts a lot of levers in the public's hands. So it's really important that they know and understand the law. So thank you for having us on. We're doing this because people have been asking us, questions. What does the law do? Does X, Y, Z work? So we want to make sure people know. Anybody looking for additional information, www.doe.ky. It's on our website. Just do a search when you hit the website what you're looking for. If you can't find it, well, on the website you can find our email address. Drop us an email. We're happy to talk about this stuff for as long as people want and as much detail as they want, so that in the end they don't have to agree with us. They just have to understand exactly what the law says and what it doesn't say, so that if there is things that they want to see done differently, they can say that from an informed perspective.
So it is a law, unlike in the past we were talking about the National Conservation Bill. So this is legislation now. A couple of questions, and certainly want you to share with us, but partly because of maybe the lack of understanding by some of us. Now, does the law cover the protection of species both terrestrial and in the water, on the land as well?
Yes, it does. So what the law does, previous to the National Conservation Law, we had the Marine Conservation Law and regulations. And there was a part of the animals law that spoke to animal sanctuaries, established hunting seasons for certain species of birds, etc. So those aspects of the animals law and then the whole marine conservation law have basically been taken in under the umbrella of the National Conservation Law. And actually, we're very happy about that, because as an island, there are very few things that we do on land that doesn't impact the marine environment, and potentially vice versa. So it makes sense to have a framework where we can manage land and sea impacts together under one legal framework.
Now with that, and we talk about the sort of protection of our species and the like, would it be easy to ask which species are not protected or which species are, as we look at it? And I think you probably know where I'm going with this.
Right. So, I mean, there is a schedule to the law that lists species that are protected under the law. So that schedule was basically compiled from a list of species that were already protected under the Marine Conservation Law and the Animals Law. Any of our endemic species that we're aware of, those species, endemic species, are species that occur only in the Cayman Islands. Sometimes they only occur on one island and not the other two. So we've listed those because by virtue of the fact that they only occur here, it makes them vulnerable to overexploitation. And then there are some species that are protected internationally through agreements that we're already party to. So, for example, the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Bonn Convention, is about migratory species. Some species pass through our jurisdiction, and we have an obligation to have protections in place. So marine mammals, things like that. Sea turtles are also protected internationally, but they were also protected under our marine conservation law, so they come in twice. Just joking. So just saying that, we haven't just there is a rationale behind the schedule. It is basically species that were already under some form of protection, are endemic species that we are aware of at the moment, and species that might be in need of protection because we have signed up to international environmental agreements that require us to put certain protections in place for those species.
Yeah, and then joking aside about some species being more important than others, the ones that people are most likely to encounter or we worried about, we put that information out in our conservation brochure, the Old Marine Parks brochure. Again, it's on our website. People can download it. It tells them what the rules are most likely to be worried about are. The marine park rules, obviously, but then what the specific species rules for those species that they're most likely to encounter.
As I listen to you, I recognize an equal that perhaps migratory birds, but as well as fish, and they're like moving through waters. People may be trading in commercial in certain species, for instance. Do they have is it legal? Do they have the requisite licensing? Like, there are obligations on our part as well.
Yeah. So commercial trade is actually handled under the Convention for International Trade in Endangered Species of Flora and Fauna, CITES. CITES. We all know about that. Yeah. So we are party to CITES through the UK. And we have been since 1976. So we do have separate legislation that implements that convention. And that's called the Endangered Species Trade and Transport Law.
Yeah. And that's a good example of one of those things where ourselves, particularly the Department of Agriculture and Customs, work very closely with the traders, the importers, exporters, to make sure that they know what the rules are. So you and I don't have to worry about if what we're buying in a store is coming legally or not. The traders are already taking care of that. And the people who, if you'll excuse the phrase, need to know, should know what the rules are.
Yeah, you can go comfortably to the pet shop, for argument's sake. Provided you're making a bona fide transaction.
Yes.
Over the counter, it should be this thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have some calls online. Can we, head to our phones? It's a Wednesday, and my friends were bringing me chocolate. It would be even better, but it's not. So we'll see what tomorrow brings. Miss Gina Ebanks, Mr. John Bothwell are our guests. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. You're on Talk Today.
Hello, good afternoon.
A good friend. Let's see if he has chocolate. Yeah. How are you, sir?
Good afternoon, Mr. Bothwell and Miss Gina.
Good afternoon.
It's always good to hear you guys on the radio, obviously. It's interesting that, we have a national conservation bill and all these other things. And it's just one thing I want to say before I go any further, though, and this one is for Ms. Gina, because obviously we know that there has been some review committee formed in order to review the the new national conservation bill that was passed a few years back. I just wanted to know if there was any updates, or if you can give any updates in terms of what those talks are about and what's transpiring within those meetings, because obviously the public at large is concerned in terms of what it is that the committee is reviewing and what purposes are they reviewing them for. Now, I'll let you answer that when I hang up, but I just want to say this. I just would like to point out that when we look back on the legislation and policies and laws that that have been considered, passed, and instituted over the last 40 years, I still haven't been able to find one single law that that spoke to the continuity or ensured the existence of the Caymanian people themselves personally. But I want to know, what would it take for us to be on that endangered list as a dying race, and how hard we would have to fight to be a part of the conservation bill or the conservation efforts in order to reserve the historical and cultural makeup of Caymanians and who we are and what we represented. Because I think that where we should always focus on environment first, because environment creates the consequences in which we live in. But certainly when we look at all of the efforts that have been made recently and a long time ago, it's really hard for anybody to argue, not from you guys' standpoint, but from a politician standpoint, where there was any real, legislation put in place that created that balance, created that coexistence with development and progression and all these things, where the Caymanian brand or the Caymanian themselves played an instrumental part in whatever development moving forward in any regards, whether it be land or marine or whatever the case is in the development. I'm just really frustrated as a Caymanian who has spent most of my life here and had a front row seat to the transition of what Cayman has become and what we're developing towards and all these different things. So my first question is if there's any updates on that review committee, and if you can share anything, please do. And certainly, how can we write into the conservation bill to protect the Caymanian people? Because I think that it's about time that we start focusing on what's important to us. We can legislate all the laws in the world to make it easier for a person to come into our country and become a resident and then become a status holder and then become a Caymanian. Yet we don't see any real inroads or legislation that creates an environment where Caymanians can coexist with these new Caymanians or these new residents coming in. So I'm a little concerned about that, because we have to have a moratorium. We need to put a moratorium down on PRs and statuses now, so we can at least identify who have just become permanent residents and who have just become Caymanians, so we can digest that before we just leave this open door policy. But I'll leave you guys there. I think I said enough. But I just, when we say the word conservation and Cayman in the same sentence, I just want to know where the Caymanian people are in all of this. You guys have a good one.
Okay.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. So I'll try and answer the question about the Law Review Committee first. We've only had, I think it's been 2 meetings so far. The next meeting, I think, is going to be scheduled sometime in August, is what I was told by the Cabinet Office representative, who are basically serving as a secretariat for the committee. The Department of Environment is we're only one member on there. I sit on the committee. So from my perspective, I'm trying to learn exactly what the concerns are with the law. That has not, there are some members of the committee who have submitted and articulated some concerns from their perspective. But it's still sort of, I think, in the working stages of trying to really crystallize what the issues are with the law that has prompted the review. I think if I could summarize it, it basically comes down, I think, to probably a lack of understanding of exactly what the provisions of the law are, and also probably some misinformation about the exact authorities and powers of the National Conservation Council, the Department of Environment, etc. So I think that is really at the nub of the problem in terms of what the concerns are with the legislation. So, and we can speak more about that, from our perspective, I guess. But that is what I've gathered so far from the legislative, the 2 meetings that I've attended for the legislation review. in terms of putting Caymanians on the endangered species list. I think that's interesting. And I guess my response to that is that whenever we go out and do public consultation on whether it's marine parks or whatever we're asking the public about, we hear a lot from the public about this loss of heritage, loss of identity, etc. I think people are feeling it very keenly right now. And I suppose my response to that is that I'm not surprised. I mean, we're operating in an environment where our development and planning legislation is sorely lacking. We don't have a development plan that functions as a development plan that, articulates a vision for the country that we ought to be following and that would be guiding the decisions in respect of our development and planning legislation. So I'm hoping that this latest effort by the planning department will yield some results in that area, because it is sorely lacking, and the National Conservation Law cannot address all of the lack of proper planning procedures and the fact that we don't have a development plan that's guiding us. Those are gaps that the National Conservation Law can't and doesn't address. Those need to be filled by amendments to the development and planning law and the agreement on a proper development plan for our country, including the sister islands, because at the moment they don't even have the defunct development plan that we have, which is 22 years old for Grand Cayman. There is no development plan for Cayman Brac or Little Cayman, which is extremely concerning.
And of course, historic and cultural conservation would need its own bespoke methods to address those problems, but we did hear question this a lot in the lead up to the law. So one of the things that was put in, it's small, but it's there for the public to use, is that for protected areas, some of the things that can be used to propose an area for protection is its recreational, archaeological, cultural, educational, or aesthetic value. So if there are those places that people feel it's really important to our identity as Caymanians and which of the three islands it's coming from, they can actually nominate those areas for protection. Obviously, there's a process, not saying that once a nomination comes in, that solves the problem. But we were able to put that in there because we did recognize that at times there was no other good tool for people to use. So while a conservation law is not the right tool, it is there for people to try and make use of.
So for those, the public, for instance, may know a particular area. They can nominate it.
Yes.
It goes to the National Conservation Council. And historical,
generally speaking, they're for biological conservation. What you would normally think of as a national park or something like that.
Right.
But within that scope, you can have scope for things that have, let's say, recreational purposes, archaeological, cultural, educational, or aesthetic value.
Right.
So you think of some of your beautiful national parks in other countries overseas that have old buildings or stuff in them preserved as well.
Right.
Again, not our forte, but the public knows these things better than we do, and this is a law that the public have these inroads in, so they can nominate, along with areas of ecological importance, these areas of cultural importance too.
If it's okay, I may want to ask more about the whole idea of protected areas, but just revisit and just thinking from the context of what may have been the public's understanding. A piece of property is, we say government land, so crown property. It's owned by the crown, it's there. There may have been a perception that particular land now is for the people, so therefore its disposition, wouldn't come that easy, and it'll be there. Has there been, generally speaking, maybe a shift in the ethos and our mindsets in the public in thinking that public lands now are probably more easily disposed, maybe they're used in a way. So a public land would be potentially, indirectly, protected land?
Well, just because land is crown land does not make it protected.
Right.
So even with crown land, there has to be a nomination for that protection. And the land needs to meet one or more of the criteria that are set out in the law.
Right.
I just want to make it clear, though, our law does not protect buildings.
No.
Okay, so we're literally talking about raw land ecological units.
Not historical
basically.
buildings and
no,
right.
no. So we can, whilst we can take account of the cultural and aesthetic value, etc., of land. What we can't do is protect buildings on that land. That is a whole other.
So buildings,
yeah, well, exactly. I mean, and I think that goes back to the very first question you asked me: what is the conservation law and what is it not? And it is not a panacea,
right?
So for all of our ills.
From the perspectives, and for those who are joining us, Ms. Dwayne Ebanks, the Director of the Department of Environment, Mr. John Bothwell. And I make sure I get his title. Manager is the Legislation Implementation and Coordination Unit.
Yes.
Legislation Implementation Coordination Unit. LICU. Oh, we'll come to something soon, Mr. Bothwell. No, I was just sharing earlier as Mr. Bothwell arrived that on a regular basis I brag about him. Not just his intellect, but he just has a charm and a humility. It's amazing. No, seriously, I don't want to embarrass you, but I want to say that publicly because I think we need to start recognizing the phenomenal talent and gifting that we have in our people. And we don't.
Thanks.
But anyway, I'll come to that later. Proud of my people, man. If I may ask, though, we have a property. It may or may not be Crown land. It may be owned by a family and they want to do it. And I think to one or two parcels, perhaps initially, the Hennings Beach, right by West Bay, they protected it, seemed in trust for them and we enjoyed as a public without really understanding how beneficial it is. But separate apart from that act by private individuals, if we were to propose a property for protection, the process, and then when it's approved, then the consequence, I guess. So this piece of land now is protected. What does that mean? And who owns it? How is it affected? How can you use it? Help us to understand that, if that's okay.
This is probably going to have to be a team effort to respond.
Okay, Susan, take notes.
So I'll start and John can fill in the blanks.
Okay.
So first of all, the law requires any protected area to be Crown owned. So
has to be Crown first.
It has to be Crown owned unless the landowner has agreed to enter into what's known as a conservation agreement with the government, with the council, to manage the land for the purposes of conservation.
And that can be for a defined period or in perpetuity?
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, each conservation agreement would be negotiated between the landowner and the Crown.
Okay.
So private land can only be protected if it's been subject to this conservation agreement. So what that means is that when somebody nominates a piece of privately owned land, our first task in the process is to figure out whether the landowner is willing to have his land protected, whether he wishes to do that through a conservation agreement or by virtue of sale at fair market value.
Okay. Before you go forward, can I just ask that? So nomination process is, I nominate Sir John here for knighthood. Right? Usually the nominations require the consent of the nominee.
Right.
If a piece of land, privately owned, I don't know who owns it, and I say, listen, that'd be a perfect piece of land for this thing. Do I need the consent of the landowner to nominate it? I can nominate it in absentia?
Yes.
Okay.
It is possible to nominate without the consent of the landowner. What is not possible is for us to take that nomination and move it any further forward without consulting with the landowner.
Our first call is always to the landowner.
Yes.
If they say no, it stops there. And so no one will even know other than that has been nominated perhaps because they've just said they're not interested and that stops the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I understood that, but I wanted to thank you for clarifying that.
And then the other thing that happens is that the Department of Environment and the National Conservation Council will then evaluate each nomination to ensure that the nominated land does meet the criteria that's set down in the law for protection. And that basically we're getting the most bang for our buck from a conservation perspective when we spend the money if it's private land that we're buying. So they will evaluate it based on criteria that have been established, through quite a lot of technical thinking and discussion. And then if it makes it through the nomination and the landowner is willing, then we put everything out for public consultation.
Now, where the landowner is Crown, So
yes.
And I say that's my land.
Mm-hmm.
That's my children's land.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Crown land.
Mm-hmm.
When is the Crown? Is it then that the government of the day, or the office, through the office of the governor, or is it for us as the public to say, well, we agree for this? Who has that sort of... Because I'm the private landowner and I'm
Mm-hmm.
the sole landowner,
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you, yes, I want the management agreement.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm the Crown, is it Her Majesty extending down her corkies? Is it the governor? Is it the premier? I mean, who's
Cabinet.
it?
Cabinet will
So
act
just name.
on behalf of the Crown, but the public get to provide input on all properties that have been nominated.
Right.
So Crown land or private land that's made it through the evaluation and has cleared the landowner query,
Right.
etc. The public then gets to give their opinion on and their support or otherwise for the nomination. The council then will receive a nominations report from the Department of Environment, which is summarizing all of the public input. The council then gets to say, yes, we agree, let's move these.
The National Conservation Council.
The National Conservation Council, let's move these 5 forward, but we're going to not move the 6th one because we think there wasn't enough public support or whatever. And then they'll send everything, including the one that they're not recommending going forward, and all of the public input to Cabinet. And Cabinet then makes a final decision as to whether to provide what's called a protected area order for all of the land that's been nominated. Once the land is Crown and there is a protected area order, then it becomes a protected area.
Okay.
Privately owned land that's been nominated, and maybe that the negotiation for the sale price is still ongoing or something, that may take some time, and it will only become a protected area once the Crown is in ownership of the land.
Right. Okay, sorry to rush you, Ms. Gina, but just let us interject a second. We have our news break. We come back to talk more. There's so much to cover. Who talk? Talking about conservation couldn't be fun. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio K-Man. Radio K-Man's newsroom. These are the biggest stories right now.
Shortly after 11 p.m. on Sunday, July 14th, officers responded to a report of a robbery at an address off Anton Bodden Drive in Boddentown. A woman had just left work and returned home with a quantity of cash. Before exiting her vehicle, she was approached by a lone male who brandished a handgun and demanded cash. The man made off with a handbag. The woman was not injured. The culprit, however, is described as being of dark complexion and fled the scene in a vehicle. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines. In news elsewhere, a fugitive bear, likened to a superhero for its daring escape over an electric pen in northern Italy, is being hunted by forest rangers. The brown bear, named M49, was snared in the Trentino region on Sunday. Italian authorities had ordered the wild bear's capture after deeming it a danger to humans and farm animals. SeaWorld has hit back after Virgin Holidays said it had stopped selling tickets to the U.S. theme park chain's captive whale and dolphin experiences. SeaWorld said it was disappointing to see Virgin Holidays succumb to pressure from animal activists. It said the activists were people who misled and manipulate marine mammal science to advance their agendas. And human leg bones have been unearthed in the first excavation of the main Allied field hospital used in the 1815 Battle of Waterloo. Experts believe they are the remains of limbs amputated by medics at the former Mount St. Jean Field Hospital in Belgium. Archaeologists and veterans also found musket balls and a cannonball, which shed new light on a famous battle. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Radio K-Man, the voice of the Cayman Islands. What's happening in your community? News and information, music and more. You can find us. www.radiocayman.gov.ky. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Radio K-Man is your choice, your voice for today's biggest news. Radio K-Man.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today in the studio. Ms. Dwayne Ebanks, the Director of the Department of Environment, together with the Manager for the Legislation, Implementation and Coordination Unit, Mr. John Bothwell. Well, that's a good title, sir.
It gets long, yes.
It gets long, man. I just shorten it, he's... No, I won't do that. I won't do that to him right now.
I like you too.
But, I'm thinking of sometimes as people we say, oh boy, I wish that tree was there. I remember when my grandfather used to push me on the swing. And things happen. But sometimes when we could do something and we don't, will our children look at us favorably? Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean we get it right all the time, but at least we try. If I could, with the greatest of respect in relation to the National Conservation Law, it is a law. Mm-hmm. So we are supposed to comply with it when it's supposed to affect us in particular areas. Mm-hmm. Couple of questions then. And I certainly want to come back to the management agreement. We're talking about protected areas, but just for the law. Who is affected by the law? Is it just the developer trying to bulldoze a big swath of land and trying to put up 50-story buildings? Is it me in my backyard? Boy, I want to cut that tree down and make sure that I can put my chicken coop there. Just curious. Yeah. To what extent?
So everyone is affected by the law in one way or another. Okay. So there are some aspects of the law where the public has to is obligated to abide by the provisions of the law. And then there is the Section 41 consultation provision, which basically puts the onus on government entities to consult with the National Conservation Council in order to get advice on the environmental consequences of what they may be planning or proposing or approving. Okay. So the public doesn't have to figure out whether to consult with the council. The obligation is on the government entity, so that be that the CPA or the DCB and the BRAC or the NRA or the Water Authority or whomever, whichever government entity. And that whole consultation process is based on the premise that one cannot have sustainable development without taking the environmental impact of decisions, and particularly national decisions, into account. That the environment has to be considered alongside economic benefits, social benefits, etc., in order for there to be a true attempt at some kind of sustainability. Mm-hmm. And that's really the premise of the consultation. Okay. I'll come back to that. Ms. Susan reminds us there's a call online. Okay, Ms. Dwayne Ebanks, Mr. John Bothwell are our guests. I'll ask you more about that, but let's just go to our phones. Welcome, you're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon, Dwayne.
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
Okay, and good afternoon to Ms. Petrie and Mr. Bothwell.
Good afternoon.
This situation with the dock. I mean, from what I remember, the UDP were planning on building it too, weren't they?
The proposal for a dock has been around for a while, so
it's
not quite sure.
It's been several years, yes.
Okay. And when they first decided to build this dock, and they were asked, and they asked you all what you all thought about it. Didn't you all respond by saying that you didn't agree with it?
Okay, so I'm in a very difficult position here because the government has taken a decision to proceed with this dock, notwithstanding the fact that there is this the referendum potential out there. So I am, as a civil servant, not allowed to speak publicly against the decision that the government has made to proceed with the dock. What I would say to you is that there was an environmental impact assessment done on the most recent proposal. It was done on behalf of the government. The Department of Environment chaired the Environmental Advisory Board that steered that environmental impact assessment, and the results of that environmental impact assessment, which are captured in the environmental statement. All of that information is on our website, together with a report that was written by the Environmental Advisory Board. So if you are interested in what the Department of Environment, as part of the Environmental Advisory Board, concluded as a result of the EIA, then I think I would need to refer you to the Department of Environment's website, where you can access all of the information on the EIA and the Environmental Assessment Board's report on the EIA.
Okay, sir.
Well, just bear with me a few more minutes, please. Well, this is something that's very disappointing, because when government decides to do things, and it's always best to get suggestions from you all before doing anything to make sure they don't make any major mistakes. And knowing that you as an individual went and you studied, and you went to university and you studied in order to be where you are today. And I know you didn't go and study this thing just to say you were going to do this type of work, just to say you chose to do so. It's something that you were passionate about when it came to the environment. And it's very disappointing to know that the government did not take your suggestion and decided to go about it, even if you suggested that you did not agree with them doing so. And I have to say, it's going to be terrible when they destroy, when it comes to the ocean floor out there. That's going to be terrible. And because of the dredging, if we have a major storm, the sea surge from that dredging is going to cause some major damage in the Georgetown area, especially on Harbour Drive. And this is not something I'm asking is if it's going to happen. It's something that's going to happen. So for government to still go ahead with this, even after learning that it would not be best, it would be best not to do so. And for these people to get over 5,000 signatures, that wasn't by coincidence. That was another warning to the government not to go ahead with this. Not just because these people don't want a dock there. These people never signed it just to say they don't want a dock there. They signed it because of the environmental impact it will cause in the ocean and on land after it's built. Or a storm could come while they're building it, after they have already done the dredging. So, I think it's very sad to know that they didn't take your all suggestions, and because as a citizen of this country, when the government decides to do things, and we feel that like there's some hope when your department has to make the last decision, and feeling and hoping that you all would make the right choice, as you usually do, it's very disappointing to know that the government still chose to go ahead with this project. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, sir. And Ms. Gina, I don't expect you to...
No, but I just would like to say that in respect of the gentleman's concerns about flooding in Georgetown, that we have recommended that an update to the EIA be done, because the design of the project has changed since the design that was actually put through the environmental impact assessment several years ago now, one of the key changes is that they are proposing dredging closer to shore. And so we have said basically that you need to revisit some aspects of the EIA, one of those being looking at the studies that are speaking to the whole question of whether or not there's going to be flooding in Georgetown, whether that dredging closer to shore will increase the flooding issue in Georgetown. So we've also said that we want this to go through the process that is gazetted under the Environmental Impact Assessment Directive, which includes opportunities for the public to give their feedback and input on what the terms of reference for the revised studies ought to be. Mm-hmm. So hopefully when that is going on, people like him will access that opportunity and provide their input.
I think tomorrow evening too, as part of the Georgetown Revitalization Initiative, they are meeting at 4:30 in what was formerly the Georgetown Town Hall, the Constitution Hall. Maybe a chance for the wider public to ask questions, not just for the short or long term. I do have to take a break. You see, people think I'm in charge. Just like at home, the women are in charge. Callers in the queue, if you would be so mindful, we'll join you right after. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
I've got some beautiful clothes. I know just where they go. Pure and cleaner.
Now reintroducing eco-friendly green Garmento fabric bags, which can be used as your clothes cover, traveling bag, etc. Also, get your fabric shirt boxes that can hold up to 10 folded shirts. And for those other shirts, put them on hangers with an eco-friendly poly cover. All bags are biodegradable. Puritan Cleaners. 3 convenient locations to serve you. Countryside, Savannah, 946-1884. Elgin Avenue, beside Off the Peg, 949-2452. 337 Eastern Avenue. Drive-through, rain or shine. 949-7104. Free pickup and delivery. Puritan Cleaners. You feel good when you look good.
British Caymanian Insurance is the proud sponsor of Radio Cayman's Noon News. British Caymanian Insurance, protecting you against loss of your home or property in case of accident liability. British Caymanian, protection, security like no other. Call them today at 949-8699 for more information. Traffic congestion is bad for your mental health, bad for your wallet, and bad for the environment. Alternative commuting habits are the solution. Cycling, walking, busing, or carpooling will help save you money, benefit your health, conserve energy, and help the environment. Do your part. Visit the ministry Facebook page for details of plans for bicycle lanes, the latest bus schedules, and be an energy advocate.
Cayman is going to Carfesta 2019 this summer. Get a sneak peek preview of all performances we'll be doing in Trinidad. 2 weekends only at the Harkwell Theatre. Music and dance shows on Saturday the 20th of July and Sunday the 21st of July. The touching play, Downside Up, written by Frank McPhail on Saturday, July 27th and Sunday, July 28th. Tickets are just $25 per person per show. Purchase at Foster's Airport and Strand, Funky Tangs, Healthcare Pharmacy Grand Harbor, the CNCF office, and online at eventpro.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today. Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today in the studio. Ms. Gina Eubanks, Mr. John Bothwell, our guest, and the National Conservation Law. Well, we might get to that. That's the topic. Was there a call, Ms. Susan? And to the caller, I do apologize if you were holding for a while. But thank you so much. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Dwayne.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Fine, thanks, and good afternoon to your panel as well.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you. Yes, an issue that was going on for quite some time, for quite a few years. Earlier in the show, someone spoke about the animal law, which seems to be, in our days, more important than the human right law. For many times, I have questioned and called the authorities, the environment, and I think I've spoken to you as well, Gina, about the situation on Conk Point Road, Papagala Road, more familiar to understand. With this issue with these horses riding on the road, clarifying that most of the companies, they transport their horses in trailers, but there probably could be two, but I know one right across from me, it had probably 15, 20 horses, could be more. And between my place and Papagala's going all the way up, the horse droppings on a daily basis, it is so embarrassing, not just to me that takes my dog for a walk, but other people that visit here, walking, jogging, that this horse manure is all over the place. When the rain comes, it's washed into the road. I am baffled, really baffled, that nobody seems to be taking this thing seriously and be accountable for what is taking place here. It is always, has always fell on deaf ears. Also across from me, you want to take a look again under grape tree there is like a moisture always settling there with all sorts of moss and flies and mosquitoes as well. And here we're talking about all different types of disease, malaria, typhoid, all sorts. And until this day, no one has, in my opinion, as far as I know, has properly addressed this issue. I mean, is this Cayman that I'm living in? Can I believe these authorities that know about this has literally done little less than nothing about the whole issue? Mm-hmm. I mean, while these people, make a bundle in other countries coming to the point, horses has a sack behind them to catch the manure and is disposed of properly. But it seems like, nobody cares, so they can do it anywhere on the road, and you got to be careful where you walk, and if you're stepping clear of it, it could be traffic coming, and therefore, if you're not careful, you could be killed or knocked down as well.
Right. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that input. I'm aware, as the gentleman said, he has spoken with me. This is another example of where the National Conservation Law and the legislation that the Department of Environment works under doesn't address the problem. And it's because really the problem is one of environmental health, but it is also potentially linked to the fact that many of the operations, like, for example, the horse riding operations, don't have any proper controls or conditions of operation applied to them that can be enforced. Now, we're aware that, for example, the animals law requires anyone who is, I believe, using an animal for any kind of commercial purpose. And I don't have the law in front of me, so I stand to be corrected, but my recollection of it is that all of those entities are required to have what's called an operations license, and or an operating license, I think it's properly referred to. And that license would be where the conditions of operation would be specified. And to the best of my knowledge, that is under the remit of the Department of Agriculture to promulgate those operating licenses and get those things sorted out. In terms of the nuisance created by the feces from horses and that sort of thing, potentially that is something that the Department of Environmental Health could address under the public health law. And I sort of hate, like John said the other day when we were on the radio, I hate saying this, that it's really not our remit, but truly this is something that other agencies need to step up and deal with. And we're more than happy to take our licks for things we're not doing, but I'm really not too happy to take licks for other government agencies' deficiencies. So for that reason, and I don't like throwing other people under the bus, but at the same time I have to defend the department that I'm in charge of as well. So, and also the National Conservation Law, that it's just simply something that isn't covered by the National Conservation Law. Horses are domestic animals, and that comes under the Department of Agriculture, not us.
Now, as I listen to you and to our listeners, I certainly believe that you will not only be most willing, but able to spend the next 4 hours here chatting about this legislation and the importance of it. But I am going to be my very best to be respectful to both you and Ms. Susan, and realize that we got less than 5 minutes. So, in the interest of understanding some of the discussion, I want to thank the caller, ask the caller just to stay tuned. We're not going to take any other calls for the last 5 minutes. But a few things, as you just shared and as the caller last identified: Department of Environment, Department of Environmental Health, Department of Agriculture. They're not perhaps in the public's mind a clear understanding of who is responsible for what. All this seems to be one and the same. And maybe as we look at the national conservation legislation, we thought, oh, that must be that thing. So the more we become cognizant of it, the better we'll be able to respond.
Yeah, and I mean, even from a planning perspective, the use of land, etc., is handled by the Department of Planning. So all of these things need to work together to basically enable the people who live in the country to realize the quality of life that they're desiring. Our national conservation law is about ensuring that we are protecting the environmental quality for not only the people that live here now, but for future generations, through protecting our species and habitats, our native species and habitats. And we will certainly work with any government agency who reaches out to us. I sat on a committee many years ago, and I'm talking probably 10 or more years ago, that was dealing with this horse riding issue at the Department of Agriculture, called a committee together. I am not sure where the deliberations from that committee got to. It wasn't my task to move it forward, but I certainly sat there and contributed what we could contribute.
Well, again, the public needs to be in okay. We just have a question, perhaps we could pose this. It says regarding the EIA for the port. The one on the Department of Environment website that was found is from 2013.
Correct.
Is that the most recent one?
That is the only environmental impact assessment that was done on the current port project. So what we're recommending is that there is an update to that to reflect the change in design of the project.
Well, let's put this. If a listener shares, if that's the most recent one, then it should be updated, or shouldn't it be updated? That's a question. So, yeah, that's what you're sharing. Okay. So, our listeners are paying attention. Thank you for that question. Thank you, Ms. Gina, for clarifying that as well. Early, when you're talking about the EIEs and the National Conservation Legislation, I hope I didn't hear them with the context, but I heard words like, and I wrote them down, heard words that said, I can read my writing now, you have to consult. Where did I write this down? And it's bad when you can't read your own writing, you can't see. And you have to take the advice, and the different government agencies have to come.
Right.
Interpreting that as such, is it an obligation that they do these things? And if they don't, what's the consequence? If the National Conservation Law says, well, we found this thing to be this way, and is it that it's now obligated that they have to do it? You follow?
So when we were debating and going around with the public on what the National Conservation Law ought to say, basically what we arrived at that people appeared to be able to live with was that these agencies are obligated to consult with the National Conservation Council before they give any undertaking or any permission or give any undertaking or give permission that could cause harm to the environment generally. In that case, they are required to take the advice of the National Conservation Council into account. Now, the Council has necessarily delegated that consultation function to the DOE. So in relation, for example, to planning applications, we continue to review the planning applications and to make recommendations on how best to avoid or mitigate environmental impacts that might be associated with those applications. If there is a situation where we do not feel that the department has the data or the expertise to provide that advice from the council's perspective, then we recommend to the council that an EIA is conducted on the project. We haven't actually recommended an EIA for any planning project that we've reviewed. We have recommended one EIA for a coastal works project, and there were, I think, 5 other EIAs recommended for road projects that were proposed, simply because we didn't have the information that we could use to advise the council and the entity who was consulting properly. The only time that the National Conservation Council has the ability to direct an entity, say, like, let's take the Central Planning Authority, for example, is when there is a project that has been proposed that will impact a protected area that was created. It's already protected. It's been created under the law. In that instance, the council can say, no, you may not do this, or if you want to do this, then you must put these provisions in place. And that is the only time when the council can direct. But the vast majority of times that we're reviewing applications, it is where we're giving advice, and it is up to the entity to take that advice into account.
Okay. I think I understood that prior, but I believe it's even more certainly clearly explained now. Now, if I may also just confirm with respect to the National Conservation Council, the law and the EIAs and the like, you indicated that the onus is on the entity, the government entity, whether it's the CPA or some other entity, to seek out. As a developer, the developer wants to do A, B, and C, makes the application to the Central Planning Authority, speaking on Grand Cayman. The developer doesn't have to worry about whether this is going to fall of the National Conservation Law, like that onus is on the entity.
Correct. But I would say that the department regularly meets with developers before they submit applications, and we welcome that opportunity because it means that we can have the dialogue with developers before they actually submit an application, go to the work of producing firm plans, etc. If we can highlight some potential issues before they're sort of solidified in plans, etc., then we always think it's better from the perspective of the whole process. And the developer gets a heads up, as it were, in respect of some of the concerns that the DOE / the National Conservation Council might be raising.
But you can raise them unless it's already a protected area. You can't obligate compliance. So the onus being on the entity, not the applicant. I was going to ask, but I think the question had already been answered anyway. The liability then would fall on the government entity, not on the developer.
Correct.
Interesting, huh?
But again, we just want to encourage anybody who is looking to do a development of any kind of scale, please come talk to us first. If you don't have to, but it will just help. And a lot of times people see these as EIAs and things like that as trying to protect something, but it also helps the developers out a lot of times by helping them find the best, most effective way to make use of their property. A very simple example would be none of us would build a house without checking out the ground first. And that obviously that's not what we're talking about because everyone's going to do that, but it's just like a step up from that. You don't want to discover partway through your planning, much less your construction, that, oh no, there was something here that I just can't build on this the way I wanted to, that you could have found it out with a little bit of dialogue ahead of time. So really it can help the developers out almost as much as it can help the environment.
Well, Mr. Gino, the time is yours if you wish, but I certainly recognize that I don't want to impose on you. There's so much more. This is important legislation, not just because of the political, economic, but the social and societal ramifications. Any other sort of initial closing thoughts you might want to leave with us, and then we come back for another day? What do you think?
Sure.
Not trying to get you in too much trouble today.
So I think that if for closing, I would just say that I would encourage people to make an effort to understand what the National Conservation Law is about. It is there for the country, for the people of the country, to ensure that we have something left for future generations. in respect of our environmental resources, those areas that provide environmental services to us that can't be replicated elsewhere. And we certainly believe that the legislation is absolutely necessary for us moving forward as a country, and we would like to see it retained in a form that makes that possible. So if you support the National Conservation Law, or if you have questions about the National Conservation Law, I guess is the first step, please do contact us and we can try to talk you through any questions or concerns you have. But certainly if your view is that you support the law, please also ensure that when the time comes and the government is seeking input from the public, that you let us know that, because quite often people only speak out in Cayman when they have a problem with something. They don't tend to let people know that they want to see this thing continued or that they support something. So don't assume that your support means nothing. Your support is actually quite important. So please do let us know if you support the National Conservation Law and the activities that are prescribed under it, like, establishment of protected areas, etc.
And just to add that it's a national conservation law, but it could also be a national sustainability law. The whole point is sustainable use of our resources, whether that's managing conch and lobster populations so we can keep fishing them in the future, or managing what's left of our open spaces to try and protect some of them, so that Caymanian identity that we feel when we look at the bush or the beach or whatever is still there. That's what this law is for. It's about, I'm not going to say it's here to protect Caymanians. It does help us protect that corner of our national identity, which is so tied to our environment. Any Caymanian knows what I'm talking about, and that's what this law is designed to help with.
Well, I hope that we'll be able to coordinate the discussion and maybe get a little bit more edification. But Thank you both very much.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure. I'm glad that you were able to keep my company somewhat. If you end up getting in trouble because of it, go get a piece of cassava cake and wash it down with some. Well, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. To our listeners, become involved and informed of what's going on in our country. And if we point fingers, remember, there are probably a few pointing back at us as well. Now, tomorrow, join the buzz. Right, Miss Susan? Miss Sabrina is going to be on. Boy, she does a great job, man. I tell you, boy, some people, they just got it. Well, be on the buzz tomorrow with Sabrina. Come back for Talk Today after the midday news for Talk Today. Until then, be blessed.
After all that talk, sit back, relax. Easy listening on the way. You're listening to Susan on the PM Show, Radio Cayman.